think you're in control of your decisions, your beliefs, your preferences, your life. But you're not. Because long before you ever chose who to be, someone else chose what you'd be allowed to see, what you'd be taught to value, what you'd be trained to fear. And they didn't use chains. They used repetition. They didn't force you. They guided you, gently, quietly, invisibly. You were never asked. You were shaped. Edward Bernays once wrote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society." He wasn't warning us. He was teaching them. The them who understand that real control doesn't need violence, just influence. The them who learned how to hide control behind language like, for your safety, for your comfort, for the greater good. And you bought it. Because influence doesn't knock down your door. It changes the furniture inside your head until you don't even remember how the room used to look. You think your preferences are yours? They're not. They were curated, filtered, and fed to you, tested on millions, optimized for engagement, delivered at just the right time to feel like your own idea. This is not conspiracy. It's psychology. They didn't need to trap you. They made you think you're free. And in that illusion of freedom, you became obedient, not through fear, but through comfort. You don't question what entertains you. You don't resist what flatters you. You don't fight what feels good. So they wrapped the control in pleasure, in convenience, in personalization, and you called it choice. They didn't need to tell you what to think. They just repeated the same things over and over until your mind made it truth. That's how conditioning works. It's not a loud voice. It's a quiet one that never stops. It hides in ads, in school books, in movie scripts, in jokes, in trends, in silence. You've heard it so many times you stopped hearing it, and now you believe that more is better, that obedience is maturity, that success looks a certain way, that being liked is the same as being safe. None of this is accidental. It's design. Because they learned early, people don't resist repetition, they trust it. And once your brain equates repetition with safety, they can feed you anything, as long as it feels familiar. So they trained your nervous system, reward for compliance, silence for resistance, isolation for independence, praise for performance. And now, you edit yourself without thinking. You filter your words, you question your instincts, you play roles you never auditioned for, in a system you never consciously joined, and you call it being mature, professional, socially aware. But you weren't born like this. You became like this. You were shaped by algorithms, authorities, and unwritten rules passed down like inheritance. They never told you the cost. They just promised you access to opportunity, to acceptance, to peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's paralysis. You don't need a cage to be trapped. You just need to believe that the cost of freedom is too high. And the more you believe that, the quieter you become. Not because you're at peace, but because you've been trained not to disturb the system. You keep scrolling. You keep consuming. And every time you do, they learn more. They don't watch what you post. They watch what you pause on. They track your hesitation, your silence, your emotional spikes, and they use that to shape what you see next, to fine-tune your reality, to feed you a version of the world that keeps you engaged, not informed, not awakened, engaged, because the goal isn't awareness, it's attention, and attention is currency. The longer they have yours, the more you give up, without knowing it. Your time, your energy, your values, your voice, and still, you think you're choosing. But what you call choice is often just a narrow hallway built by someone else, lined with options that lead to the same outcome. compliance. Because when every door leads back to the system, freedom becomes aesthetic, not real. And somewhere deep down, you know this. You feel it when you hesitate before saying what you really think, when you sense the edges of your personality softening, when you censor yourself not out of respect, but fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being exiled, fear of being unliked. So you shrink, you edit, you adapt. And that's when they win. Not when they silence you, but when you do it for them. If you're still here, you're not like most. Subscribe and hit the bell, because you don't need more noise. You need spaces that show you the pattern, so you can break it, because no one wakes up by accident. You either choose clarity, or keep sleepwalking through a script you didn't write. There comes a moment, quiet, small, when something doesn't sit right. A sentence, a headline, a sudden pause before you click. It's not outrage, it's not rebellion, it's just doubt. And in a world built on control, doubt is dangerous, because doubt leads to questions, and questions are contagious. They spread, not through noise, but through silence that doesn't feel safe anymore. You start to notice, the tone in the news isn't neutral. The advice in the ad sounds more like instruction. The recommendation feels more like manipulation. You notice the narrative, and how everything that challenges it gets shadowed, softened, or spun. You notice how those who ask real questions get labeled difficult, extreme, conspiratorial, because questioning power threatens its design. It pulls the curtain back, it makes the invisible visible, and that's where your real power begins, not by fighting the entire system, but by stepping out of the role it gave you, by seeing that your thoughts were inherited, that your fears were programmed, that your voice was taught to echo, not to question. You start reclaiming things, your attention, your doubt, your silence. Not the trained silence that avoids conflict, but the intentional silence that refuses to obey. You start answering less, explaining less, agreeing less. You start replacing "I should" with "why," replacing "that's just the way it is" with "who said so," replacing "everyone thinks that" with "I don't." And for the first time in a long time, you feel your mind moving freely, not fast, but unchained, unfiltered, unowned. And that freedom, that clarity, it's not welcome everywhere, but it's yours. And once you feel it, you don't forget. You're not lost. You were just led. Led through habits disguised as values, through fear dressed up as logic, through obedience wrapped in branding, community, and doing the right thing. But now you see the strings, and once you see them, even if you stay inside the system, you're no longer inside it blindly. That's the difference. That's the beginning. You start to pull your attention back like a weapon. You stop giving away your mind for free. You stop consuming without asking, who benefits from me believing this? Because influence isn't evil, but influence without awareness is. It turns you into an echo, a consumer, a follower, and you're not any of those unless you let yourself be. So this is where the shift begins. Not in rage, not in rebellion, but in refusal. Refusal to live on autopilot. Refusal to believe that what's common is what's correct. Refusal to let someone else narrate your reality. You get quiet, you get clear, you get dangerous, because now you're thinking for yourself. And that is the one thing the system fears most. Not resistance, not exposure, but your independence, your unplugged, undistracted, unowned mind. Now let me ask you this. What belief have you carried for years that you're just now beginning to question? Drop it in the comments.